Chesapeake Light Tackle. I thought it might be fun today to take a look at some fish finder situations, some of the things that we might see, some situations we might encounter out there when we're looking at our sonar screen. You know it's easy when it's just lit up with fish from top to bottom, or we see sometimes we call it a false bottom because the fish are so thick on the screen that you can't even register the actual bottom. But there's a lot of other situations that we encounter from time to time that are just as important, and sometimes you can miss some really nice fish if you don't know exactly what you're looking at. So let's take a look at a few. Now it might seem odd to be talking about sonar and fish finder views when there's so many breaking fish around. A lot of people never bring out their light tackle gear unless they see birds and breakers. I think that's a mistake because you won't always have those birds and breakers around. And if you learn how to recognize fish feeding beneath the surface on your fish finder, you'll have a lot better days consistently, even in the summer, because a lot of times there's bigger fish down there beneath those birds. And sometimes there's even bigger fish holding on structure nearby. When we're talking about fish finders and sonar shots, a good place to start might be when not to use them. It probably sounds crazy that we have this amazing sonar technology and then we decide to turn it off. But there are people, including me, that believe in certain situations those sonar pings might put fish on alert. So I just kill my fish finder when I'm in situations like, for example, bridge pilings. I know I'm going to fish those pilings. I know I'm going to sneak up there and I'm going to cast into those pilings. So I don't need the fish finder to tell me if there's fish there. There probably is fish there already, so I'm just going to cast there. I'm going to stay way back off those pilings. I'm going to be as sneaky as I can, and I'm going to let my lure be my fish finder in this situation. For a lot of Chesapeake Bay fishermen to get their heads around the concept of stealth. It comes naturally to guys with a freshwater background because you have to be sneaky to catch bass. But fish are pretty prolific here in the Chesapeake, and because of that, a lot of guys just don't understand that you have to be sneaky. When fish are really biting, you can stomp beer cans in the bottom of the boat and still catch them. But on the days when it's really tough, or you're out there just for the big fish, you have to pull out all the stops. You can't leave your engine running. You can't drift right over the top of the fish. You have to be sneaky. So here's a classic situation when you do need your fish finder, and that is when fish are holding on the bottom on a ledge. That's one of my favorite situations, and it's one that a lot of guys overlook. Right here I'm looking at fish holding pretty tight to the bottom at about 13 feet or so, and fishing with Rich and Jamie, and it won't take these guys long to hook up. So most anyone would recognize fish on the bottom like in that previous situation, but it's not always that obvious. Here's an example where I'm coming up on a ledge. I'm on the deep side in about 29 feet, and the first thing I notice is a picnic line. Now, picnic line is just an area where the temperature and the salinity of the bay water changes. So little pieces of sticks and leaves and other organic matter will sink down to where that density changes, and they won't go down any farther. That'll show up as a return on your sonar. So I'm going to pay really close attention to where that picnic line intersects my ledge, because I believe that's where the fish might be. They're either going to be on one side or the other of that picnic line because the conditions are going to be better or worse on either side. So here's my ledge coming up, and I'm looking for where that line, that picnic line, intersects my ledge. And you see I'm coming up on it just about right now. And watch this. There's the bait, and there's the fish. It's real subtle. You might go right over it and never see that, but that's a good return for nice fish feeding on a ledge. They're just right there where that picnic line intersects. Let me show you. Let me zoom in a little bit here. Yeah, I hope you can see that. So just a return here and there. There's a fish kind of holding off back behind that bait. That's all I need. I can catch fish here. See, I've got these fish all to myself. There's not another boat around. A lot of guys just passing right by these fish, nice fish on the ledge here. Here's another example with the sensitivity turned way up. This time the fish are holding beneath the density change, beneath the picnic line. You can see it very clearly there, and look at those nice marks on the bottom beneath it. Now here's an example where we don't have those picnic line returns to help show us where the fish are. We're cruising across a 15-foot flat. There's a lot of surface turbulence up there causing the returns, but look on the bottom here. See those little subtle marks there? That's rockfish. Sometimes when rockfish aren't very active, they'll just go down and lay side by side in the bottom. They especially like to do that in areas where there's cover. For example, shellfish or grass. They'll get right down on the bottom, and if you're not paying close attention, you'll never see those fish. Here's a few more examples of what it looks like when they're laying side by side right down on the bottom. That's a fish catching situation. Now let's look at some suspended fish situations. Here's one we've probably all seen. There's bait on the surface and some feeding rockfish down beneath. The trick here is just to get that lure down there into the strike zone. It looks like it's 40 feet deep, and those fish are holding about 30 feet, and that's where we need to be jigging. And here's another suspended fish situation that we see especially in the summertime on the Chesapeake Bay. You can see the picnic line up there about 10 feet deep. Apparently there's some bad water up there the fish don't like, and they're not liking it too deep either, so they're just holding in that 20 to 25 foot zone. And the trick is to keep your lure right in that strike zone. You've only got a real narrow band there where you can jig for the fish. This is the time when you have to pull out all the stops. It's a situation where I add a lot of scent to my lures, or lots of contrasting colors. Maybe I glue a rattle into the pocket of a soft plastic jig. And the weight of that lure is absolutely critical because you have to be jigging where the fish are. Now here's just the opposite of that situation. I've got fish on the surface and fish down deep, but nothing in the middle. There are little fish on the surface, there's some fish breaking. I don't know if you can see a few birds out there, some little fish flipping around on the surface chasing rain bait. But look down here deep. There's some bigger fish down there deep. You hear about that situation a lot, but you don't see it too much. And here's a good example on the fish finder. So where I want to be fishing is not on these little fish up here on the top. I want to be looking for these bigger fish and staying out of that dead zone right there in the middle. Now, I'm up above the Bay Bridge a little bit. There's water coming in from the Chester River, of course the Susquehanna, dirty water probably out of the Patapsco, and that's what's causing that dead zone right in the middle. But it's pretty unusual, but you do see it sometimes. And the trick is to get down there where the bigger fish are. You don't want to be messing with these little fish up here on the surface.
Good fish. Sorry, I don't mind hitting the cameraman in the head. Nice fish.
So we talked about fish that are holding tight to the bottom and fish that are suspended. Well, here's some shots of fish that are holding to cover. They're looking for places to hide, to ambush bait fish on the bottom, and that's my favorite situation for catching big rockfish, especially in the summer and fall. And I plan to put together another video tour about that, especially as relates to some of the artificial structure that's been added down in the mid-bay, some of it just recently. So stay tuned for that.